Call to order the regular meeting Tuesday, October 1st, 2019 of the Chino Valley Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioner Pasiak, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Welker,
Here.
Commissioner McCafferty, Commissioner Pasiak,
Here.
Commissioner Switzer,
Here.
Commissioner Metters,
Here.
Vice Chair Armstrong,
Here.
and we have alternate Somerville
Here.
and Chair Merritt.
Here. Thank you. I'd like to move on to item 4A, consideration of possible action to approve September 3, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to look them over? Is there any questions or comments? I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5, staff reports.
I have no staff reports for tonight.
Thank you, sir. So we will move forward to the public hearing portion of this meeting, item 6A. Consideration and possible action to rezone approximately 6.85 acres of real property from the MR1 multifamily residential 1 acre minimum zoning district to the MR1 PAD multiple family residential 1 acre minimum zoning district with a planned area development overlay. The project proposes 152 units and 4 stepped 2 to 3 story structures. The property is generally located 1,400 feet west of State Route 89 and 620 feet south, with assessor's parcel number 3062324C. Alex.
Good evening, Chair, Commission. Before you have an item by the applicant, Brook Associates Living LLC, and they are coming before you for a request of a zone change from the MR1 zoning district to MR1 PAD overlay zoning district. The property is not abutting Road 2 North, but is a little bit further south of the property of the roadway. It's about 14,000 feet west of State Route 89 and 620 feet south of West Road 2 North. The property is accessed through a future road, Hawksnest Trail, which is provided by a future commercial subdivision of Heritage Place. As you can see here, we have commercial properties abutting State Route 89, and as you go further west, you have properties that are more residentially based with a medium to low density residential. We have Chino Grove subdivision to the south as well. Just some of the current data for the property. The property is as far as lot size is 6.8 acres. It has an existing zoning classification of MR1, multifamily residential 1 acre minimum. General plan land use designation is commercial multifamily residential, and a portion of it is within the potential community core. The property is vacant as we speak. Here we can just see a zoning map. As stated before, to the west we have more of a residential use to the properties, and as you go further east towards the highway, we have more of commercial type of uses, both commercial light and commercial heavy. Just a little bit of the project of the history of the project. This project went before council back in 2006, and through ordinance 06-668 that received approval for the request to rezone the property from, at the time was an Ag 5 zoning district, agriculture residential 5 acre minimum, to the MR1 multifamily residential 1 acre minimum, and portion of it SR2 single family residential 2 acre minimum. When the zoning was approved, the property was a bigger piece, and the zoning designated the west portion of the property, the east portion of the property to the MR1 zoning district, and the west portion of the property to the SR2 zoning district. In November 2006, the property was subdivided, and as we see it now, the piece that was rezoned SR2 is the neighboring property to the west, and the subject property stayed with the MR1 zoning district. This item was before Planning and Zoning Commission back in, or last July 3rd of 2017. Staff recommended approval for the project. Planning and Zoning Commission forwarded a recommendation of denial to Town Council, and subsequently the project was pulled by the applicant. At that time, the applicant was proposing a higher density of 192 units. So the applicant has submitted his application and is requesting to rezone his property to the MR1 zoning district with a PED overlay. He is asking alleviation for the density, and he's proposing 152 units. As you see here, here's the site plan, and we have some portions of the site plan that are highlighted that we want to indicate. The blue represents the setbacks, meaning that this is where the property or the developer cannot build within these boundaries right here.
If the public can hold our comments until they are given a chance to speak, that would be great. Staff has the chance to deliver their staff report. Thank you.
So once they clear these setbacks, that means that within the white area is where they can start building their building, where they can start building. Highlighted portion that's in purple and orange represents the buildings and where they're going to be located or arranged. The purple portion of it represents the three-piece portion of the building, and the orange piece represents that should say two-story building, the two-story portion of the building. Here on the side, if you could read this, it just gives some general data about the project. Lot coverage, they're proposing 20.1% lot coverage. Open space, they're proposing 79.9%. Active space, 33%. And then it gets down to the unit count. Each building is going to be providing 38 units. Each building is going to have 9 one-bedroom units, 21 two-bedroom units, 4 3-bedroom units, and 4 4-bedroom units. In total, there will be 16 3-bedroom units and 16 4-bedroom units in total. Here's an elevation plan that was provided by the applicant. As you can see here, you can better see the 2-3-step building. As you can see here, to the edges of the building is going to be where the 2-story portion of the building is going to be located, and in the middle will be the 3-story building. The elevations of the building are, as stated here, is going to be the three-story building is going to be at 35 feet, and the 2-story portion of the building will be at 28 feet in height. As you can also see here, the building and the design of the building doesn't have any balconies and no access to the units. All units will be accessed through an interior hallway. And this is, the design of the building is to mitigate the pollution, or the pollution noise. The noise pollution. It's just a conceptual, elevation plan as well, as you can see, standing from the street view and looking at the building. So as stated before, currently the current zoning that has the current classification allows for one dwelling unit per 3,000 square feet, and based on the acreage that the property, the acreage of the property, which is 6.8 acres, that would, the project would be allowed right now as we speak 99.3 units. And as stated before, the project is proposing 152 units or 22 units per acre. That's an increase of 7 units per acre. With a PAD overlay, when they're asking for deviation from the current development standards of said zoning, they have to give something in return, or they have to provide increase in another development standard. In that case, the developer's proposing to increase the setbacks, increase landscaping, parallel parking to the south property line, and screening to the development as well. Screening on the south property line and the west property line. Here, as we see a conceptual landscaping plan that basically shows the arrangement of all the green spaces within the property. Within our development standards with landscaping requirements, it states that for multifamily residential properties that are abutting single-family residential properties, there's a 10-foot buffer that's required, but at the end of that requirement, it says along street frontage. As you can see, and as we described, the property does not have street frontage. The project is still providing substantial amount of landscaping. And we're talking about if there were abutting street frontage, they would be required to have a 10-foot landscaping strip abutting the residential property. To the south, the project is proposing a 20-foot buffer. To the east as well, and to the east, and to the west, they're providing a 40-foot buffer. Here are the amenities that the developer's providing. Mandarin multi-use paths. As you can see here, there's a multi-use path that goes along this green space and then goes along the bottom to the east property line going southbound, west property line, and to the east property line over here. They're also providing exercise equipment, gazebos with seating area and barbecue pits, and park areas or basins, which are the green spaces that are provided over here to the north. Here is just a table to better show you what the applicant is asking to deviate from the development standards and what they're giving back to deviate from that density that they're requesting. As you can see here, max units, currently with a current zoning classification that they have on the property, they can start building out right now, and they'll be allowed 99 units. As stated before, they're proposing 125 units.
152.
125
I think
units.
there's a mistake.
152.
152.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
reversed.
Thank you. Density, they're allowed 14.5 per acre. They're proposing 18.3 units per acre. Maximum lot coverage within the current zoning district, they're allowed 40%. They're providing 20.1%. Maximum building height, they can't exceed 35 feet, and they're not exceeding 35 feet. As stated before, setbacks, front setback, 20 feet. The building will be clearing that 20-foot requirement. To the right, 10 feet. The buildings go from 120 feet to 165 feet from the right property line, or in this case, the east property line. The west property line, 10 feet is their requirement to clear, and they're going from 44 to 98 feet. And this is another error. This should be the left property line and the right property line.
Alex, also on the density,
Yeah.
in the report, you have 22 units per acre. So I don't know which one's right.
Okay. As far as landscaping, if they were to provide landscaping, our landscaping requirements require 1 tree for each 20 lineal feet. That's 144 trees, and they're providing 233 trees, which is about double the requirement. For shrubs, they're required 4 shrubs per 400 square feet. That's 114 shrubs, and they're providing 740 shrubs. Minimum screening, they're not required to put any type of screening, that either fence or block wall or anything of that type. They will be providing screening to the south and to the west of the property. At this point, the developer is still working with staff to see what type of screening they will be providing. As far as parking, based on the parking regulations, they're required to provide 184 parking spaces, including guest parking and handicap spaces. They will be providing 287 spaces. And that's 103 more stalls that they're required to provide. Here you see, again, the site plan, which indicates how far these buildings really are from the property lines. So the closest building to the south property line will be about 84.9 feet. And from the west property line, it will deviate from 44 feet all the way to 98 feet. From the east property line, from 102 feet to 165 feet from the east property line. Here is a visual just to indicate the project in relation to other projects that have been approved that have the same type of density. As you recall, 2 years ago, Village North, adjacent to State Route 89, was approved for 156 units. About 400 or 500 feet north of the subject property, Hawks Nest PAD was approved for 224 units. So the density, this high of a density has been approved in the past within this area. So, town staff notified property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. That resulted in staff sending out letters to 17 residents within a 300-foot buffer. Staff has been communicating with the residents. A lot of residents did request project narrative, visuals, site plans, and I believe there is also a resident that wrote a letter to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Planning and Zoning Commission has received that letter from that resident as well. The neighborhood meeting was held on August 26, 2019. Same meeting. Project gave a brief narrative of what the project consisted of with the details. Residents brought up a lot of concerns and issues that they had. A lot of them had to do with why the project was coming back, if they were gonna have dogs allowed on the property. The project representative stated that animals would be allowed on the property. One of the residents asked if there was a limit to how many dogs each unit could have, and at that point, the project representatives said that they didn't know at this time. There was other issues that came up or they had concerns about. One of the main ones had to do with a secondary access, as noted within the staff report. Fire department requires a secondary emergency access only when the unit count goes above 200, and if the buildings are provided with automatic sprinkler systems, they don't need to provide the secondary access. The project is below the 200 unit count and will be providing automatic sprinkler systems. And this was, these regulations are in section D 106.1 of the International Fire Code. That talks about when projects should be providing a secondary access. Another issue that they had was that the project would be generating more traffic than that area currently has. And staff also indicated that on the staff report on traffic impact, where staff provided general numbers of the traffic rate that would be increased by this project. So through our analysis, it's important to indicate that within the general plan, this property is within the community core, or the main community core. A portion of the property is. Looking through the general plan goals and focuses of the development for the community core, strategy number 1 states as follows, or strategy number 1 says for the goal is to encourage new variety of residential and compatible development in the community core. So for substantial lifestyle choices. And then strategy number 2 indicates is to protect existing residential and large lot neighborhoods as new lifestyle choices develop through buffering, separation, screening, and other plant methods. The staff believes that the project is providing an additional option to residents within the area. Although these two other projects, Hawks Nest and Village North, were approved with a higher density, there's no signs that these two projects are going to develop anytime soon. This project has the chance to meet these goals of the general plan by providing options of different living choices for residents that are coming into the area. And staff believes that the project developer is doing enough to buffer, to separate, to screen, and have planning methods to mitigate the impact that the project might have on surrounding residents. So with that conclusion, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to Town Council to adopt Ordinance 2019-873 to rezone approximately 6.85 acres of real property from the MR1 zoning district to the MR1 PAD overlay with associate development plan and the following conditions. Now keep in mind that some of these conditions are still in the draft form, especially condition number 5, 6, 7, and 8. These conditions were set by the Public Works Director, and he's still working with the developer. They might change a little bit, but if it gets to council, as well as condition number 2 will change a little bit the language on that. So condition number 1 is the project shall substantially conform to the site plan, landscaping plan, conceptual building plan, elevations, and for other exhibits provided by the applicant as modified by the by staff's recommended conditions. This means that with the density that they're requesting, they're gonna be held to that density through these development plans that they submitted. Number two, developers shall provide screening along the west property line and south property line. Condition number three, depth of flow over on-site and off-site street shall not exceed 1 foot to allow passage of emergency vehicles. The standard applies to both public and private streets. Condition number four has to do with drainage, that the project will provide drainage on site. Now, condition number 5 to 8, as stated before, is still in the draft form. Condition number 5 is 5 foot concrete pedestrian sidewalks on site and off site shall be required. Number 6, Hawks Nest Trail shall be constructed to commercial standards. Number 7, intersection improvements on Road 2 North in accordance with the revised traffic study shall be required. And condition number 8, water and sewer mains on Road 2 North shall be 12 inches diameter. And that is it. So, if the commission have any questions for staff or for the applicant is also here.
All right, so we'll start with you first, Alex. Does anybody here have questions or comments concerning the report?
Alex, back on the slide that showed the, yes. Also on the parking, so it says 103 more stalls would be required. I believe that's only 27.
No, that's an error right there. What staff meant to say is that parking requirements based on the units that they're proposing, they're required to provide 184 stalls. They're providing 287 stalls. It should say that they're providing 103 more stalls than are required
Okay, per the proposed.
per the proposal. Yeah.
Alex, in July when we went over this, one of the concerns we had was a children's playground area and a possible dog exercise yard. I don't see where they addressed either one of these.
The inclusion of a tot lot is a major liability for developers or property owners. We are discouraging that as it becomes a liability. If a child were to be hurt on that, then the property owner is liable.
So this is gonna be an adult-only community?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying to mitigate some of the liability, we're not recommending a tot lot. There's a trail leading around which would accommodate the dogs. There's a basin there which would be a park type area that would allow the dogs a place to run or whatnot. But there are places for gazebos and barbecue amenities, but we are not recommending the inclusion of a tot lot for those liability issues.
So in effect, we're not gonna allow children in this?
No, there can be children there, but to mitigate some of the liability that the property owner may incur from having a tot lot, we're not recommending the tot lot.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Alex. Would the owner like to come up and speak to us? When you come up, would you please state your name to the microphone?
Mr. Merritt, Chair, rest of the commission. Cole Johnson, developer, owner.
Might want to pull that up a little higher for the folks in TV land.
Yes, sir. Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So do you have any comments or any discussion that you'd like to have with the commission?
No, other than I hope, I certainly appreciate that we have some neighbors that haven't been supportive of the project. Hopefully they recognize the steps that we've taken between these versions. We've made some pretty significant concessions and adjustments based on everyone's comments to maximize the screening and to minimize the impact of this. We do think that obviously it's addresses a need that the town has and provides the proper requisite transitional zoning going from the commercial to the single family residential. Multifamily housing is always recognized as the natural transition. We think we've done a good job to create that bridge for the community.
All right, thank you. Anybody on the commission have questions for the owner or comments?
One
Right.
comment, I probably should have made it to Alex, but if you go into the project description, paragraph 3, the final line of that said, the developer is exceeding all of the zoning development standards. So we're gonna go in and just wipe out the development standards and let him go upward of all of them.
When it says he's exceeding the development standards, then he's going above and beyond what our code would require. So our code requires a 20-foot front yard setback, 10-foot rear, 20 on each of the sides. He's exceeding by at least 4 times that on all sides except for the north building, which is as far away from any residential property except for the western residential property. He's exceeding all of those standards.
And still the one egress, one ingress.
The fire department, CAFMA, has said that they only need 1 ingress-egress for emergency vehicles because they're going to be sprinkling the buildings. And the unit count is less than 200.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We may ask you to come back up after we've listened to some of the things from the public.
Happy to do so.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna open the public discussion part of this meeting. We've had discussions about this property in the past. We're gonna stick really close to the 3-minute rule tonight because there's lots of folks that want to speak. When you come up to the podium, please state your name. Be polite. Try to be concise and not repetitive if possible. And then if I decide to let you go on a couple of minutes longer, that will be my decision only. And at the time that the 3 minutes is up, it'll be my discretion to ask you to make a closing statement. So having said that, we'll all act like ladies and gentlemen here, and I will open the public portion of the meeting to somebody. Please raise your hand before you get up. I'll acknowledge you and you'll step up to the podium. Otherwise, we're gonna have a stampede.
Chair Merritt? Chair Merritt?
Yes, sir.
Just for a point of order clarification, if the public can address their comments to the commission as opposed to the applicant or staff, and let the commission chair decide whether to direct that question to staff or the applicant, that is his responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Also, I may ask town staff or the owner to come back up to the podium to address some of these things, and then we will proceed from there. So who would like to be first? Ma'am, if you would step up to the podium and please state your name.
Thank you. I'm a retired teacher. I should know to raise my hand. My name is Jean McFadden and I live on Grove Lane. The request to increase the density of the development of the Brook Apartments is about money. It's about money for the developer and the property owner and the town of Chino Valley. It's about 7 landlocked acres that were once zoned for assisted living, 99 units. Next, it became 3 stories, 4 buildings, 198 apartments. Now the plan is for 152 apartments in 2- and 3-story buildings with up to 4 bedrooms. Fewer apartments, more bedrooms. Same issue, density, nothing has changed. Chino Valley's general plan, land use strategy number 1, states that the town will encourage a new variety of residential and compatible residences. There is nothing compatible about 2- and 3-story buildings next to single-story large lot homes. And yet, the developer's representative said at the neighborhood meeting that they could not, if they could not build 152 units, then it was not economically feasible for them to do so. Our concerns about safety and density have been addressed. The town planners have said that the developer has met or exceeded the standards. Common sense tells me otherwise. Let me be clear, there's not one among us who would object to a reasonable transitional housing or light commercial growth along the Road 2 North Highway 89 corridor. We object to the density looking into our backyards. Does Chino Valley need apartments? I don't really know, but I do know that transitional housing is being built over by the high school with some duplexes. I do know that Old Home Manor, which is one of Chino's greatest ideas, has provisions for apartments. Chino Valley is growing, mostly through new housing residential areas. People move to Chino Valley to live on those large lot acreage. People wish for fries, they do, but they understand that driving to Prescott is part of living in Chino Valley. What economic advantage does building 152 apartments give to us? You will hear others talk about the Brook Apartments and what it will cost. It is more than we can afford. Those apartment dwellers will be on the road to Prescott to work, along with some of us who are not retired. They will stay here until they can move. They will be a neighborhood of renters, and few of them will stay to become part of the larger culture that is Chino Valley. Development services, sorry.
Go ahead and finish up.
Thank you. Development Services have recommended that P&Z move this forward to the town council, but you voted against it last year. What has changed? Nothing. We are still rural. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Who would like to be the next person? Ma'am, you come up. Yes, ma'am. When you step up to the microphone, if you'd state your name, that'd be great.
Good evening. My name is Tina Harmon. I live on Grove Lane also. Rezoning the Brook Apartments parcel is not an improvement from last year's plan. In fact, the plan is denser based on the number of bedrooms and potentially people. To do a better job comparing the plans, that's what I used to do when I worked for Kroger. You need to compare the 1 and 2 bedrooms from last year to 1 to 4 this year's plan. The previous plan of 1 to 2 allowed for 288 bedrooms. The updated plan of 1 to 4 bedrooms allow for 316 bedrooms, which in anybody's, it's going to mean more people, which is an increase of 10% more from last year. Joshua said a better way of comparing and identifying how many people are going to be there is based on the census. I did some research looking online with real estate websites and realtor information, and they said the income of the people is a better indicator of how dense the apartments are going to be. If it's a lower income people, there's going to be more people in the units. Now, the presentation said there would be less density. The per acre density is 22 units per acre, or at least 46 people per acre. Brook Apartments will be the densest parcel in Chino Valley. Approval of the zoning will change and will be setting a precedence for Chino Valley. The plan touts that the lot coverage is only 20.1. If you look at the unit and if you look at this, the building coverage is only 20.1. But if you look at all the asphalt, that I think accounts for another 60%. So they're not giving us more space. They're just putting the parking somewhere. So I just don't buy it.
Ma'am, if you would kind of just address all these comments up here to us, that would be really nice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
you know, I don't consider this an improvement. They made no change to that floor plan. The MR1 zoning is intended to provide a buffer between the adjacent 1 acre lots or more properties and the commercial zoning. Allowing this zoning change for an additional 52 units or 53 units is a 10% more bedrooms is not an improvement. The house on Grove, immediately next to Brook Apartments, sold for $406 or $406,000 2 years ago, which is going to be, it's going to be next to this area. If you look at the floor plan, they're putting a dumpster right next to that house. What do you think it's going to be worth in the future? They were, when we talked about this last year, they were supposed to move it, and they have not moved it. So they have this dumpster next to Grove Street, Grove Lane. Currently, there's a house for $498,000 on Grove. Good luck getting it. The current recommendation, and oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead and finish up.
The current recommendation has the taxpayers, and I didn't see it on Alex's proposal, but it was stated that we would pay for part of the pipes, the sewage and the water pipes. I don't want my tax dollars to go for that. You know,
Thank you, ma'am.
something that's going to be of benefit to one person or to one entity.
Thank you, ma'am. If you could wrap it up, that'd be great.
It is not fair for Chino Valley taxpayers to improve the value of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought that gentleman had his hand up the last time. If you'd come up, and ma'am, you'll be next. Please step up to the podium and state your name.
Hi, my name is Chris Clevenger. I live on Grove Lane. I want to thank all the commissioners here. I do have a question or statement that was overlooked or glossed over in Alex's presentation, and that's the fact that only a portion of this lot is covered by the overlay. And if you can ask Alex how much of that lot is actually covered with the overlay? I think
Do
it's
you have
less
that
than,
information with you, Alex?
Yes, I do. Vicky, can you pull up the zoning map again? And I think what you're referring to is that you're stating that only part of the
yeah,
property.
there's a core that you talk about, the city core.
Oh, okay.
Page 11, community core.
So he's talking about the land use designation, the general plan land use designation. So, as stated before, the property general plan land use designation is multifamily residential.
Right, I'm talking about the circle that you guys draw.
The community core, I believe.
Yeah,
is
the
what he's
community
talking
core.
Community core.
Correct.
Is it true that it's less than 20% of the actual lot in question?
That's actually not relevant. The future land use map of the general plan,
It is relevant, though.
it is not an exact circle because parcel lines were not put on that map. It is an it's an estimation of where that circle is allowed to go. So there is flexibility built into the general plan because parcel lines were not put on that map.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I'd like the commissioners to consider that this only less than 20% of this property is actually covered by that community core. Just a small portion. We're on the very outside edge of that development, and only a small portion of it is considered in the core.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The other reason that's really not relevant is the property already has MR1 zoning, which allows for apartments as it is.
And I was part of the general plan amendment committee then when we worked on that, and that was intended to be an idea and a concept of where the core was gonna be. It was never intended to be an absolute boundary line. It was just a designation to indicate how, the town might wanna consider development in the future. Ma'am, would you please step up? Let us know your name when you get there.
My name is Dean Nixon.
Ma'am, if you'd pull the microphone right down in front of your face,
Okay.
everybody will be able to hear you.
My name is Dean Nixon, and I had no intention of being up here talking to you tonight, so I'm not very well prepared. But I do want to mention, as you can tell, I'm probably one of the oldest ones of you in here. And it's a little bit of an experience. My husband and I, when he retired, we moved to a very nice area that we were already familiar with. And on this street was a home for the for people, senior citizens. There's beautiful trees. It was 1 story in a V around shape, and beautiful flowers, well kept, blended right in with the neighborhood, no problem. But eventually, there was, they had to let the disabled, not the older disabled, and not veteran disabled, but young disabled men were able to move into this place because it was senior and for disabled. But they were disabled due to drugs. Okay, soon, it wasn't long until the beautiful patio was nothing but a parking lot. Very shortly, there were other druggies moving in, other undesired people, and this is a wonderful neighborhood. So, the people, the seniors that were at the senior place, their families started having to come in and move them out because they did not want them living in this environment that was taking over the apartments. Eventually, everyone started putting their houses up for sale. It took us 1.5 years to sell our house. Other people started renting theirs out for the simple reason that property value had dropped tremendously. So therefore, what I'm saying is I feel that we better think twice on this as to exactly what this is going to come to. When you have 4 bedrooms, believe me, there's going to be 2 families living there. And I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, please, no more applause. This isn't a theater, it's a meeting. Let's try to keep the enthusiasm down a little tiny bit so we can get done here tonight. All right, anybody else like to step up? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Cindy Cole. I live on Grove. A couple things that I still can't justify. First of all, I have been an Arizona licensed insurance producer for over 25 years. I write commercial, I write homeowners, I write property casualty. From the moment I talk to somebody, I wrote policies for apartments here. I wrote policies for convenience stores, a lot of homeowners. From the first moment I talk to somebody, I'm listening, I'm talking to them, hearing what they say, because from the minute I start talking to them, I'm looking at the risk, okay? A risk such as, are we gonna have 1 family? Are we gonna have 2 families? Maybe I saw a map incorrectly, or maybe it was an error, but one map I was looking at last night on the 4-bedroom apartments, is that an error that there was also 4 bathrooms?
I would doubt seriously that any developer or home builder would put 4 bathrooms, 1 for each bedroom.
Okay, one of the ones we saw last night, it said 4 bedroom, 4 bath. So right there, it's like, why in the world would you have 4 bathrooms in a 4-bedroom apartment? I have a couple contractor friends, talking to them, and they were talking about, because my feeling is, and I've seen it, when you have a 4-bedroom apartment, you're gonna have 2 families living in there. And somewhere, Alex might be better at answering this question, because somewhere I've heard from some contractors that there's a limited amount of space for how many people live in a place, okay, in a unit. But I tried getting the answer on what the square footage was, and everybody said leave it alone, because number one, you're going to have a really hard time mandating it. There is supposed to be somewhere square footage, but again, you're not going to have, nobody's going to be able to mandate it. It does happen. Another concern from going back to my experience is writing insurance. I worked Katrina, the Hurricane Katrina. I was on catastrophe duty. And one of my concerns before was the fact that I still have a problem with one exit, one enter. And Alex had stated that, I believe he said, under 200 units, you didn't have to have 2. When I worked Katrina, it was so bad, cars are stopped. And so I understand for fire, we have sprinklers in there. We don't just have fires. We've had 2. We're not gonna have a hurricane like Katrina, but we've had 2 tornadoes. We had one just a couple of weeks ago down in Cave Creek. We had a tornado down in New River. So what's gonna happen when you have your first responders coming in? You have a fire truck coming in, you have police coming in.
Go ahead and just finish up if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm saying is, it's major catastrophe. Like I say, I've been on catastrophe, I've seen it. Those people are stuck, cars don't move, and you've got the first responders going in. And I'm sorry, I know you want me to be done, but I just have one thing to say to end this. When I purchased this home, I think when anybody purchases a home, they research the area. You look at the house, you look at the area, you do your research. When it's written on paperwork and you see the zone, when it's on paper, you take that, you own it, because it's in black and white on paper. You shouldn't be, when you're buying a house, you shouldn't have to say, ooh, well, the zone says this now, but it might change. Out here, I see my neighbors. I am so confident if I needed help, I could go to any one of those and they would be there to help me. I'm confident that they could come to me. I would help them in a flash. We still go by the golden rule in this neighborhood. We treat others like we want to be treated. So I want to leave you with the thought and the question are we getting treated the way we're treating people? Would you want your zoning changed in your backyard? And would you want a 3-story apartment in your backyard?
Thank you. No applause, please. Thank you. Anybody else want to step up and speak? Yes, sir.
I can be pretty short and sweet. My name's Larry Holt. I
Would
don't
you
live on
mind
Grove.
lifting the microphone up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
My name is Larry Holt. I do not live on Grove. I've watched this project for the last 2 years closely. You all have a letter from me. I hope you got a chance to read it before I came in here, because it will outline some of my concerns. As a police officer for 32 years, 12 of those as a chief in a rural community just like Chino Valley. We had a lot of 1-acre single-family residents, and then they started moving apartments in. Our crime rate soared. There have been studies done on a national level that show when you bring high density into a rural community, you will have a crime rate increase. And here's the key on this. The crime rate is not property crime, it's violent crime. When you get a bunch of people in a small area, you have problems. And those problems tend to become violent problems, whether it be a simple battery all the way up to rapes and murders. And we saw them all in the community I was at. The last thing I want to leave you at is something that came up this week that is very disturbing. The property owner or his representatives have already advertised this project as being approved and going forward. If that's the case, we're in violation of Arizona state statutes. There is no way they should be advertising this project as being available already and set up for renting and approved. And if it is, that is absolutely wrong, on shame on everybody who is involved in it. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Sir, step up to the microphone and let us know who you are.
Hello, my name is Nick Salee, and I live at 523 Grove Lane, and I will live here. I am 19 years old. I am the future of this area. I was the one that encouraged the purchase of this home. I chose this home because of the current zoning and its low crime rate, just as he said. I wanted to live on a street that is safe and has a little more space than my former home. We drove through the area and I noticed that there were no apartments in sight. I'd like to keep it that way. We all have all of our homes are above average and well kept. Not one of them on there is messy. It is the perfect place for me to live when I grow older, because there's nothing that I have to do to change it and make it look nice again. I enjoy taking photos of the natural environment. If the zoning were to be changed and the apartments are built, that would not be possible. They would be blocking the surrounding view, which is what I want, and they would be an eyesore, especially because they're in my backyard. I have to look at them all day. I've attended 3 high schools in the Tri-City area, not because of me being kicked out or expelled, but because I have wanted varsity letters, which I succeeded in all 3. I have the letterman jacket to prove it. Attending them 3 high schools from every area, from Prescott Valley now to Chino Valley, I've seen the good and the bad. Areas that have apartments nearby are primarily the ones that have high crime rates and a lot of drugs. I've seen it personally. I've had 2 friends that overdosed in the bathroom at Bradshaw. Builders and developers, you will not be living here in 20 years, but I will. What happens now will have a large impact upon my life for years to come. As I said, I want to live here. I am the future. Please don't change the zoning. Don't destroy our atmosphere. Thank you.
Anybody else? You, sir? And there was somebody raise their hand over here, ma'am, and then you. Okay?
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and Commission members, I'm Chris Fergus. I'm the architect of this project. And I just wanted to clarify a couple things. First of all, this property is zoned MR1. What we're asking for is a relief of the zoning density. We would like more density. But this property is zoned, has been zoned MR1, if I'm not mistaken. This property does allow 99 units on it, 3-story buildings. And those 3-story buildings can be put right up against the setback, 10 feet, 20 feet from the property line. We went through great lengths to design this thing to keep them away from property line and lessen the impact on the neighbors. Also, we're not asking the town of Chino Valley to pay for our water, sewer, electric. The town of Chino Valley said that if we have to put in an 8-inch water line for our property, they want it upgraded to be able to handle future developments and that they would contribute to that. But we aren't asking the town to pay for anything. In fact, we're still negotiating, but the town would like certain things, and we're trying to accommodate. But anyway, this property is already zoned MR1. We didn't zone it MR1, it was zoned MR1, and the density is, you know, still 99 units, 3-story buildings. We're asking for some more density. But, and again, we're putting we've gone to great lengths to design this thing to keep it away from the neighbors as best we can. But this property can handle 3-story buildings, that we're allowed to have 3-story buildings. That's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to clarify those things.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mary.
Good evening. My name is Mary Turner. I live on Grove Lane. I have a little different approach to this because I moved here in 1982. I met my husband immediately. We got married immediately. We had our family. We raised our 2 children here, kindergarten through 12th grade. They graduated. We have built 3 homes. We have built 2 homes on Grove Lane. And about a year and a half ago, somebody said to me, "What do you think of the apartments going in next to you?" I was shocked. I had no idea. It was my understanding always in this town that I've lived in and raised my family that you get notified when somebody changes a zoning next to you. We were never notified. That seems to be a continuing problem. The minute we found out about it, we pursued it. We came down, we got documents, we called, we got as much information as we could. We got together with our neighbors. Nobody notified us of the agricultural change. We heard a rumor in 2006 that possibly there was a 1-level assisted living going in. We thought that will bring jobs, that will bring something that our community needs, elderly living. We never heard anything else about it. We thought we didn't get letters, didn't see anything, our neighbors didn't say anything. We thought it must have not happened. And then a year and a half ago, 3-story apartment complex. When did it go from a 1-level 99 assisted living to 3 stories? There's nothing 3 stories in Chino Valley. I live adjacent to this property. I invested in my land, my home, my children. I grocery shop in Chino. I buy my gas in Chino. I contribute to this community. This is my American dream. And for somebody to come in and just all of a sudden it's a 3-story apartment building in my backyard, they're taking my American dream. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
My name is Carolyn Strickroth. I also live on Grove Lane. And all of the comments that were made at the last meeting, I still stand behind. I am opposed to this. But when I found out about the website, I started doing a little research. And I still don't understand how these apartments are going to benefit Chino Valley. But in my research on the website of these apartments that are now being touted as come and check them out type thing, I checked into the management company that they have selected. In our previous meetings, the residents have all asked, is there going to be a manager on site? And we were told yes. Okay, fine. But in researching the company, Shelton and Cook, I have some comments that previous residents in different areas of California and Arizona have made living there. And these are just current ones. In June, the person gave them a 1-star because a sprinkler pipe broke and the kitchen ceiling fell in. The property manager was rude and said, well, things happen. She said I could either stay in my flooded apartment or she could move me into another one, but I'd have to pay higher rent. In September of this year, a 1-star. Never received my deposit back, although I moved out in May. I've called numerous times, even sent a certified letter. No response. September, 1-star. Don't know how they, Sheldon Cook, is even still in business. August of this year, 1-star. Tenants are very low priority. No way to contact the management company, and they keep adding fees that are not even covered in my lease. August of this year, 1-star. This was from a person in Phoenix. The air conditioning went out. No one answers the phone. I now have black ants everywhere. Maintenance will not respond. Please don't ever rent from Shelton Cook again. August of this year, a 1-star. Worst apartment experience ever. September of this year, a 1-star rating. They are neither proactive or reactive. Dog waste everywhere. They never clean up. Numerous unresolved maintenance problems. Do not move into property managed by Sheldon Cook. They have breached my lease, and I have turned the matter over to my attorney. Now, I don't understand why they couldn't consider a management company that's local, which would help the area and help the businesses in this area. And Mr. Cook, I'd like to know if you're related to the cook of Shelton Cook.
That, ma'am, was an uncalled for statement.
You're
and
kidding,
we will
right?
not put up with that here.
I
That is
apologize.
an unfortunate thing that you just said there. That gentleman is a employee of the town of Chino Valley and will be treated with complete respect. That was uncalled for.
Well, a lot of
Please
people
have a
have
seat.
asked.
Anybody else want to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Jay Paddock. I have a issue with the traffic. The amount of vehicles that are going to be in this heavy density area are going to tear up our streets that are already tore up. You see people going through the roundabouts, they're going to be all over the roundabouts, all these people that don't know how to drive. We don't have enough money to fix the streets now. Who's going to fix them? When the trash trucks come down the street at 5 in the morning to pick up the trash, they're going to crush the streets. Not only that, they're going to ruin the whole environment of everybody. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name's Scott Turner. I live on Grove Lane. There's a couple of things I'd like to mention, and one is that in the future, this is a request for the city, because there's a lot of hearsay as far as I didn't get a letter, I did get a letter, nobody sent me a letter. If the town could send out certified mail to each one of us, that it was in last meeting we had a discussion of 1,000 feet instead of 300 feet, and apparently that's not in place. Certified mail would be up to the person to pick up themselves. If they don't pick it up, that's their problem. But at least the town would know they sent it out, and we'd get notified. Another thing I have on this issue is the dogs, with no dog park, the waste. If there is going to be children, there is going to be issues with dogs and kids. Attacks, high density. 3-story, dogs at the 3rd level have to go to the bathroom. They got to get them down quick. You only have stairs. It's another issue. Background checks. Will there be background checks on these tenants? And then as far as 7 and 8 on the board, if that has not been finalized at this point, how can we move forward with this project? Fencing, they're saying they're going to fence, they're going to put in a lot of landscape, a lot of trees. Why are they putting in so many trees? Because they want to hide this building from us. And I understand that, because I don't want to see it. We have a density at 14.5 per acre, and we put that in place for a reason. And I should think that all of us should uphold that and stay with that. As far as the 99 units, there again, they told us at the last meeting that that wasn't feasible. And that to me is a money issue, which everybody that builds in construction, money is an issue. That's what you're out there working for. But this isn't something that is going to make me any money. It's probably going to pull the value out of my home. And there's homes that have lost sales already in the area because they heard of this going in. And that's not fair to us. Retainer ponds are for retaining water. They can't be part of the property for playgrounds or dog parks or anything like that, as far as my understanding. That is for wastewater runoff. You can't have kids down there playing in a rainstorm as it fills up. Debris in there could be dangerous. I don't know if they think that we're not thinking through when they had 1 and 2 bedrooms. I can't remember exactly how many 1 bedrooms, how many 2 bedrooms. And now we have 3 and 4. Is there going to be a stipulation whether 4 single people can move in to a 4 bedroom, 3 single person in a 3 bedroom? They all have jobs. Did they calculate those cars and that issue in the traffic? We could have 300 cars leaving that place a day onto our roadway and 300 cars coming back at night and travel during the midday. That little 1-lane road over there is not going to handle that.
You want to?
I think that'll do it,
sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Council. My name is Floyd Dugan. I feel like a fish out of water because I don't live on Grove Lane, but I have lived in Chino Valley for 19 years. My point is that in one manner or another, we're looking at these density, I'm not necessarily saying high density units, and if all of us folks that are here, including you council folks, look around where we live, there's plenty of property. Now, I've seen in the 19 years from wanting to do away with all flag roads to now it's open to nothing but flag roads. I'm just saying we need to really be careful, not just about the apartments, but where I live and where most of us probably do live. We can look around and see a lot of acreage that we may be seeing a whole lot of apartments in. Thank you. That's really it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Chris Foley. I do not live on Grove Lane, but I am an adjacent property owner. I think I share about 1,300 feet. I'm on the west side. And
You're the horse lady.
I'm the horse lady. Yeah, I'm the horse lady. So, but I'm also an engineer and I'm very pragmatic and, you know, things are what they are. And, you know, nobody wants these apartments going in, but that's almost not the issue. Those apartments that, you know, that MR1 zoning has been there forever. And I'm not advocating that, you know, let's put this in. I'm just saying we don't have a choice. Something is going to go there. And this developer could put apartments 10 feet off my fence and they can be 3-story high without any of these meetings, without any kind of approval. But they are, so what I'm seeing is what they're proposing for me as the longest, you know, property fence line sharing person, that they have actually offered almost a 100-foot setback as opposed to the 10 feet that they don't even have to ask for, plus that they made the apartments fully enclosed, because I can't stand listening to other people's radios or stereos or things like that, so that there aren't going to be any balconies out there. Those are two huge things for me as an adjacent property owner. No, I'm not crazy about the density. No, I'm not crazy about the fact there's going to be low-income people there, whether it's called low-income housing or not. I'm not crazy about the fact there's going to be a lot of kids and the kids aren't going to have anywhere to play and all the dogs. all of that, but something is going to go there. And I did just lose a $500,000 sale of my property because the buyers heard about these apartments, but that doesn't mean these apartments caused the loss of the sale. That I knew when I bought the property there could be 99 apartments up there.
Need some water?
I think my main point is
He needs
the setback that they're offering, and that they're offering enclosed buildings is huge for me as one of the primary adjacent landowners. And I speak only for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else in the neighborhood. And my husband and I already started planting tons of trees last year, you know, to start putting in our own buffer.
Thank you.
But that's what I have to say. Oh, wait, no, I do have a question for the town in terms of, yes, something's going to go there, and if this is going to be it, this is going to be it. But there has to be something in it for the town. What's in it for the town to increase the zoning here? Is it a bigger tax base, or is the town going to get a bunch more money? How's that money going to get spent? Blah, blah, blah. So I have heard and understood that if a project is proposed and there's something in it for the town, like Joshua is clearly all for this project, but I haven't heard, you know, A, B, and C. Here is how Chino would benefit from it. And if you could direct that question, I would like to hear some specifics about how the planning department thinks this project is going to benefit the town.
So when I give the planning gentleman a chance to come visit, up here to the podium, I'll make sure that they address that
Okay.
for you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right, seeing nobody else, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting. So, I have a lot of comments. I've tried to take a few notes. I'm never going to get them all out. But I would like to ask town staff if they could step up and maybe address some of the questions that we've been asked.
Where do you want me to start?
Well, we have some concerns. I've heard lots of wordage about crime and drugs and how apartments only attract low-life people, and that if there's 4 bedrooms, there's going to be 2 families living in there. I will make a comment on my personal family. I have a son right now that can't find a place he can afford to rent in this town. He has 5 kids. He could certainly use an apartment that had that many bedrooms in it. He was born and raised here. I moved here in 1979, and I've helped build this county. I'm a general contractor, so I didn't float into town, make my big money, and leave. And so I would like to know some of the things about high crime and drug users and people that rent.
Staff did research on crime in our community. We looked at the website Crime Mapping, which is a website used by our police force. They directed me to that. In the last 6 months, there have been numerous crimes committed in the town, a majority of which have occurred on the east side of 89, none of which have occurred at the locations of apartments in town, most of which have occurred in mobile home parks, RV parks, or in some of the subdivisions.
Okay, thank you. So in moving forward to address the homeowner to the west, their question of what's in it for the town, would you just maybe expound on that a little tiny bit?
Sure. Currently, water and sewer are not extended to this property. They terminate on the west side of 89 near the Walgreens. As part of this project, the developer will be extending the water and sewer down Road 2 North, which would allow for future connections for additional commercial, multifamily, and single-family residences. It would provide apartments, which is something our town sorely needs. When I moved out here, I looked for an apartment, could not find anything less than $1,300, and nowhere close to where I needed to be. So the additional 152 units will definitely meet a need for the community. The extension of the water and sewer customers will also be good. The recharge credits would continue to go to the town as well.
So I have a question that I heard in there. The town may participate in extending the infrastructure up, and the words 8-inch line and 12-inch line came up. Would you maybe explain to these folks what some of that means?
So basically an 8-inch line is, and Stephen can correct me if I'm wrong, but the 8-inch line is what is required. But staff would, the town would pay for the increase from 8-inch to 12-inch line. We would not be paying the installation costs. We would not be paying the trenching or anything like that, but the upcharge to the pipe itself.
That sounds like a pretty minimal investment on this project.
Stephen might be able to address that better than I can.
Yeah, it would be pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, pipe's cheap.
It would just be the pipe, not any of the labor, the trenching, just the pipe.
Okay, so another thing that came up in some of my notes that I made here is meetings not being properly posted, 1,000-foot distances, that sort of thing. Maybe you could educate us on that?
Sure. 1,000 feet has never been a state statute or a code requirement. I'm not sure where that number came from. We are required to notify all property owners within 300 feet of the property line of the subject property. That is all.
So I believe, and I can be corrected here maybe from some of the commissioners, but we, in one of the meetings, had that comment come up, and we knew we were going to come back and address the issue ahead of us, and so we asked that 1,000 feet radius be put around the project to notify folks just as a courtesy. It was never intended to be a permanent standard. So the 300-foot radius is required.
The 300-foot radius is legally required by Arizona state statute and our UDO code, which is what we followed.
Okay, and just so to clarify this, all the meetings that we've had on this have been properly and legally posted.
As far as I'm aware, yes, they have.
All right, and including we postponing the last month's meeting to this month because something wasn't posted.
That's correct. We became aware of one error on the posting on the property itself. The other two, the posting in the newspaper was correct, and the other posting was also correct. It was the posting on the property that had it said the 2nd of September when the date was actually the 3rd, even though it said Tuesday. So in order to avoid meeting law requirement, to avoid breaking meeting law requirements, we renoticed the property and asked for a continuance.
All right, thank you. Any of the commission have questions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's a bit of a concern about the lowering of property values. And have you been able to address that?
Honestly, I think that concern is subjective. It'll depend on the project itself and whether the developer maintains that property and things like that. So honestly, I can't speak to property values, whether it will lower it or not. There are some high-end apartments that maintain property values and increase property values, and then there are other properties. There are single-family properties that don't maintain, and they bring down the property values of adjacent properties as well. So it is a rather subjective question.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a statement if you'll allow it.
You betcha.
And Josh, that's not a question for you at all. I'm looking at the UDO, the purpose, and it basically says the purpose of this ordinance are to secure safety from fire, panic, and other dangers, to provide adequate light and air, to lessen congestion in the streets, to prevent overcrowding of land, to avoid undue concentration of population, to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewage disposal, schools, parks, and other public requirements, to provide for the social, physical, and economic advantages resulting from comprehensive and orderly planned use of land resources, to allow for the orderly implementation of the general plan and to otherwise promote the health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the citizens of Chino Valley. I do not think this project meets that.
Alrighty. Would the owner like to come up? Thank you, Joshua. Would the owner like to come up and address some of the things that he's heard, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm going to try really hard not to be repetitive. You know, with that in mind, I don't want anyone to think I'm being dismissive. I'm going to touch on a couple highlights that I think haven't got hit. The apartments are going to be professionally managed. Shelton Cook is recognized throughout the United States as one of the best property managers there is. They're very, very high integrity. They manage many tens of thousands of units across the Southwest. So with that being said, I certainly could understand and appreciate that they've probably at some point have some disgruntled tenants. With that part of that professional management comes though credit checks and background checks. Both are required. Both are pretty stringent. The standard that Shelton Cook utilizes on their apartment projects is much higher than any rental community or rental property would otherwise have. It's why we utilize them and have utilized them for a lot of years. As respects to stormwater retention areas, throughout the history of development, stormwater retention has been multi-purpose. They're green space, they're place for people to play, place for people to walk, and stormwater retention when they need to be. And that's every city and every town and every park that's ever been created. Most of our parks throughout anywhere in the community are created, started with a need for stormwater retention. That's the source, and they grow up into be a park for us. So that's the same here. We didn't address, and I certainly don't want to derail anyone, but if a need that the community perceives is for a dog park, and staff supportive of us integrating that into the retention area, we're happy to discuss doing that with staff. We certainly don't want to derail any progress that we've made, and we certainly appreciate that you know, dog parks are concentrating an issue to the extent we are going to allow dogs and allow pets. We're going to have to concentrate a dog park somewhere, and I'm guessing if we did it on the south side, no one would like it. I'm guessing if we did it on the west side, no one would like it. But that's something that we're completely happy to work with staff on that need. As respects the notice in 2006, I will tell you that I talked to a lot of homeowners in 2006 that were adjacent, that were noticed, that weren't happy either. And I would also point out that the general plan was approved by referendum. This isn't something that we created, and what we're doing is consistent with the general plan and within the general plan area. I think that's all that I have that wasn't otherwise addressed, and unless the chair would like to direct anything else to me.
I think most of what my notes say were property management issues, that sort of thing. And I think you've addressed that.
Okay, wonderful.
All right, anybody from the commission have a question?
Yeah, I have one comment. I believe one of the ladies that stood up and talked mentioned that they had gone on a website and saw that these apartments were all being advertised.
We have started a website to start assembling, which we do on all of our sites early on, to assemble information, resources to share. It's the easiest way of having a website is the easiest way for us to assemble the data, and as whether it was a site plan or a construction plan, as they get advanced, whether it goes from a design set to a submittal set to an approved set, they get substituted in, so that we've got basically, you know, we can provide access to anyone, including your staff, our most current information.
So go ahead.
So they're not being advertised as approved?
Advertised for rent? Or I'm not sure who advertised as to.
As the project being approved?
I don't believe so. Yeah, I need to look into that. One of the people sitting next to me shared what they were looking at, and I'll check into that in the morning to see exactly what that is.
Anybody else? All right, so I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
So what I would like to do is to get a comment, not comment. What I think we should do is entertain a motion either for or against this item before us tonight. So I would entertain a motion, and just so the audience knows, as tradition and general rule, the chair does not make motions. His job is to facilitate. So if you don't hear me make a motion, it's not because I can't or don't. It's just not the proper way to go about it. So I'd entertain a motion. We have to have some sort of a motion to either move forward and approve it for a recommendation to the council or to not.
Looks like it's me. Mr. Chairman, I would like the Planning and Zoning Commission to forward a recommendation of denial to the town council to adopt ordinance 2019-873.
Okay, so we have a motion for denial here. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
You have to speak into the microphone.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I would call for a vote, and it's going to be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Welker?
Nay. Okay, so let me, before we go any further, let me make sure that the commission understands clearly that the motion is for denial to the city council to approve this. So if we vote yes, we are saying that this is not going to go before the council as our recommendation.
Correct.
Chairman Merritt, if I may add, if you are voting yay to go with the motion but against staff's recommendation, you need to provide your findings of fact as to why.
We'll do that after we get done, if that's okay. Okay, so now starting over again. I want a roll call vote.
Commissioner Welker?
Nay.
Commissioner McCafferty? Oh, he's not here. Commissioner Pasiak?
Nay.
Commissioner Switzer?
Yay.
I'm sorry, that was yay?
Yeah, yes.
Yay. 2 nays, 1 yay. Commissioner Meters?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Vice Chair Armstrong?
Aye.
Would be yay. And Chair Merritt?
I vote no.
Okay, so that's nay. And alternates, Somerville?
Yay.
Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3 nays, 1, 2, 3, 4 yays, if I got that right.
Okay, so the motion is carried by a majority.
That is correct. The commissioners that voted yay or aye for that motion need to state their findings of fact.
Okay, so roll call vote again for the people that voted yay, for them to state their reasoning for not voting for.
Okay, Commissioner Switzer?
I feel that it does not conform to the current UDO as far as the community, as per the statement of the other commissioner. I also feel that its current zoning is the proper density for the MR1 designation, which it's already set at. And I also believe that it doesn't meet the Target 2 strategy of protecting existing residences in large lot neighborhoods. And I also believe that even though it meets code for fire protection, the fact that there is not a snorkel or ladder unit in Chino Valley, and the closest one is Prescott Valley, that could potentially be a disaster in its own making.
For a point of clarification there, though, Chino Valley does not have its own fire department. It relies on CAFMA.
Yeah, CAFMA does not have a ladder truck in
They
Chino
have
Valley.
2 apparatus that can extend 35 to 150.
In Prescott Valley at Station 50.
It still serves Chino Valley though, so
Okay,
they
but
do have it available.
Yeah, it's a ways away.
It's
quite a ways away.
But it's point of clarification, they serve Chino Valley, so therefore there is an apparatus available.
They do, if they're available.
Commissioner Metters?
I agree with what Switzer said. I am also concerned about the impact on traffic, even though first responders, if there's a traffic accident on 2, there's not going to be any egress available for this apartment complex. I'm concerned about sprinkler systems in 3-story buildings with interior ingress to the apartments and everybody trampling each other going up and down hallways to get to stairwells. I've lived in situations like that, and during fire drills it was very chaotic. I'm also concerned about the increased traffic on 2 North with children going up and down the street to the school, and I am concerned with no adequate facilities for children to play in an apartment complex with this many children available to live there.
Vice Chair Armstrong?
I also concur with the other 2 members of the commission. Also, the dog issue, the children issue, I don't think was explained as it needed to be and addressed as it needed to be after we voted this down last time. And the conditions that the staff has put forward, and they're saying, I believe it's 4, 5, 6, 7, and possibly 8 that are still in draft form and going to be approved by the town engineer. I'd like to see that approval done before we vote on it.
And Alternate Commissioner Somerville?
Yes, I agree. Hit myself in the nose. I agree with the rest of them, yay sayers. I also was concerned about the one exit in the apartment. I've seen that happen where there's been a fire, and I've actually been in an apartment, and having one exit is not a very good idea. Also with the roads and the traffic on that particular street, I see how crumbly the asphalt is in that area, and it would be probably 10 times the more damage to the road when you had more people and more traffic. Also concerned about the property value. I know you said it was subjective, but I think it's really objective. When you're building a house, you want to know how much your property is going to be, or how much your house is going to be, how much value your house is going to be, as well as the property. And if something happens to change the ambiance of the area, then the property values are going to go down. Okay. Also, I'm looking at the architecture of the building. You know, I'm not an artist or an architect by any means, but it's not a very attractive building as far as I'm concerned. If it was a little bit more creativity put into the building, I know you've got a budget to worry about, but if it looked a little nicer, you know, columns or gargoyles or whatever you put in to make it look nice, it would maybe increase the property value. I don't know. Okay, and that's about it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Commission. All right, so we're going to move forward to item 7, non-public hearing action items. Do we have any of those this evening?
We do not.
And item 8, any discussion items? All right, so come to item 9. This is an opportunity for the public to make comments about anything that is not on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, we can't comment. So it's an opportunity for the public to come up to the podium and talk to the commission about anything that we have jurisdiction over. Is there anybody that would like to speak? All right, we'll close that portion of the meeting. And our favorite portion, item 10, a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I'm sorry,
Aye.
who second?
Aye.
Did you second?
Thank you, Commission. Thank you, staff. Thank you, folks, for coming and participating.